This video will break down the pros, the cons, and the strategies to subcontracting work to other private investigators. One major reason most PIs subcontract work out is to help with niche or specialized areas of investigation. You see, we can't possibly know how to do it all. There is no true jack of all trades when it comes to the private investigations industry. Sure, there are some folks out there that try to convince people that they know it all. And those are the PIs you need to steer away from, to be sure. And I will cover how to vet PIs when you are looking to hire subcontractors here in a moment. Some of those specialized skills you might consider subbing work out to include investigations that involve, let's say, computer or other forms of cyber forensics. Back when I first started doing TSCM bug sweeps, I tried to do it all. I had software to check computers, hardware to check phones, systems in place to analyze networks, and more. But as time went on, I quickly learned I couldn't do it all. I couldn't keep up with the technology, the software, the hardware required, and most of all, I couldn't keep up with the training that was necessary to do it all. So I started focusing on primarily doing bug sweeps, looking for physical bugs like hidden cameras and recording devices, as well as other observable physical threats. And I also started subbing out or referring out the other technical work that involved checking computers, phones, and networks. This video is sponsored by OREP Insurance and Working PI Magazine. OREP is a leading provider of private investigator liability insurance. Visit orep.org for a quote today. Now, there is a big difference between subbing out work and referring out work, so let's discuss that before we talk about the important things you need to consider when you do sub out the work. If you refer out the work, that means you are sending the client to another investigator, or you are contacting another investigator and providing them with details for the client and letting them take on the case within their own company. But can you make money referring out work in today's PI industry? The simple answer is yes, you can, but there are some things you'll want to consider first. I do direct referrals for cases I can't handle because of my limited knowledge in that specific area of investigation, because of geographical concerns. If they're in an area that I don't normally work in, that becomes challenging, and because my existing workload is too heavy. Sometimes I just get too busy to take on all of the work that comes my way, so I then have to consider either referring the work out or subcontracting the work out. Now, for my referral partners, they kind of fall into two categories. One being just a direct referral with zero expectations, and then there are the ones I have a verbal agreement with to compensate me in some monetary fashion for referrals. Now, if you're looking at doing referrals on a compensation basis, you need to keep these important things in mind. First, it is based on the honor system. You need to know you can trust the person you are referring the work out to. In most cases, you will have no way of knowing whether or not they got the case or how much they charge for the case. For most referral programs, you can expect to get around 10% of what the other PI charges, but this is always negotiable. Some referral programs I have done in the past involve just flat fees, like $100 to keep it simple. But I have been burned on referrals too, meaning I referred out work to another PI who said they would pay a referral, but then they never did pay me, but I did find out later that they did get the job. Today, most of the referrals I do are based simply on the fact that I will pass the work on to another investigator and I expect nothing in return. These referral PIs are friends in the industry that I have known for a long time, and I also know that they refer work to me with zero expectations too. Subcontracting work out, on the other hand, basically means you are hiring the other private investigator to do the work for your company. But they are not an actual employee of your company. They are a subcontracted employee with you. Now, before we discuss the actual contract that you need to have in place, let's discuss the legal definitions of subcontracting. Subcontracting is, in general terms, a situation where there is an agreement between two parties. One of those parties is the primary contractor who agrees to perform a contract or a project on behalf of the party, the original contractor, who is responsible for ensuring that the work is completed in accordance with the terms of the original contract with the original client. So this in general puts you in the role of the original contractor because you have a contract with the original client. Now, before we go any further, I want to say I am not an attorney, nor do I play one on YouTube or anywhere else for that matter, and nothing in this video should be considered as legal advice. Now, don't let all of the legal mumbo-jumbo confuse you, though. Subbing out work is fairly straightforward. There are just some precautions you need to take. The most important thing to remember is that the PI you subcontract work to is a 1099 contract employee, not a W-2 employee. A big difference here is the tax classification. The 1099 subcontractor is an independent contractor that is subject to and responsible for all self-employment taxes, wage and income reporting, and all other federal requirements regarding taxes. A W-2 employee, on the other hand, is subject to payroll taxes, and the employer is required to pay those taxes on the behalf of the employee as well as other benefits. The subcontractor will also be responsible for their own benefits, like health insurance, retirement plans, and all that jazz. A big thing you need to watch out for is that you do not treat your subcontractor like a regular W-2 employee. If you start treating them like an employee, doing things like requiring them to work a specific set of hours every day while they're performing work for your company, they may be able to come back and say they were actually a W-2 employee and are due compensation for benefits and tax payments and things like that. There are ways you can and should protect yourself here, and the primary way is having a subcontractor's agreement in place. This agreement will specifically lay out all of the terms regarding their role as a subcontractor and your role as the company hiring them as a subcontractor. I will go over what my subcontractor agreement covers and what I believe yours should cover too. If you would like a copy of my subcontractor's agreement, I have it available on my website for a minimal fee, so you can check it out at howtobeapi.com. Your contract needs to clearly state several things up front. One of these is that the subcontractor is just that, a self-employed 1099 subcontractor, not an employee of the company. It also needs to clearly state that the subcontractor is responsible for all taxes, wage reporting, and benefits for themselves, and that your company is not responsible for this. It should also have a clause regarding insurance requirements, such as Private Investigator's liability and errors omissions insurance, as well as vehicle insurance. Another clause for the contract would be regarding how and when the subcontractor will be paid. This would include hourly fees that you would pay, travel you would cover, mileage you would pay for, as well as report or specific other duties that are required. My contract also stipulates the time frame for when we will pay for the work, which is generally within 30 days after the final invoice is received. Now be careful here. You don't want to list all of the kinds of duties and make it look like an employee's job description. This is one big mistake a lot of PIs make when starting out. My contract just has a simple services clause that states the subcontractor shall provide contractor with general, technical, and investigative services along with reports and briefs in the format which I provide. Now you also need something like an expense clause, which will state what expenses like mileage are paid and something to the effect of other expenses as permitted by you. I also have a court appearance clause that says the subcontractor agrees to appear in court and fully cooperate with us and our attorneys in how they will be compensated for any court appearances. And of course, you need some clause that says the contract cannot be assigned to someone else without your approval. Now let's discuss one of the most contentious areas of subcontractor contracts, the non-compete clause. I try to keep mine very simple and direct. I say the subcontractor cannot solicit my clients with services similar to what I provide while the contract is in place and for 3 years after. Some people may think this is too lax of a non-compete clause, but the logic here is that trying to put in a non-compete clause that essentially forbids the subcontractor from ever doing any competitive type of work has many downsides. First, it most likely would not be enforceable in court. Just like with any contract, if a portion of the contract is unfair, illegal, or unethical, it's not going to be enforceable. Secondly, no PI in their right mind would sign the contract. And believe me, I have seen plenty of PI subcontracts that do just that, especially with some of the big national firms. The thing to keep in mind is to keep it fair. Don't put anything in the contract that you wouldn't agree to yourself. There also needs to be a non-disclosure clause too that states the subcontractor will keep everything secret, not disclose any information, and they will protect that information. You have to have this to ensure your clients that everything will remain confidential, which also means your client contract needs to have a use of subcontractor clause in it too, so the client knows that you may not be doing all of the work yourself. Your subcontractor's contract should also have a termination clause that spells out how either party may terminate the agreement, and an arbitration clause stating how disagreements will be handled between you and the subcontractor should they arise. Along with all of that, I also have clauses that cover integration and modification, severability, governing laws, and attorney's fees in my contract. Now, before we get into the details of how to find and vet subcontractors, let's discuss one thing you may have noticed that I did not mention in the contract. This is the actual assignment of work that you expect to be done. Now, you could have this in the contract, but that would essentially require you to have a new contract every time you hire the subcontractor to work a case. In essence, the way my contract is laid out, and for all subcontract work in particular, the subcontractor has the right to refuse or accept any assignment that I send them. So I make sure that when I ask the subcontractor if they can work a job, I send them all of the details of what I expect for that job. In the assignment, I can state specific dates, times, duties, like I can say, this assignment requires surveillance this Saturday and Sunday from 7 a.m. until 5 p.m. And I can also state in the assignment, if there is no activity within 4 hours, the surveillance will be terminated. And I might state that I need hourly time shots and updates at specific times of the day and any other details for that particular case. The subcontractor then either accepts the assignment as provided or doesn't accept it. If they accept it, then they're bound to the details that I put in the assignment as well to the details in our subcontractor contract. The key thing here is once they accept the assignment, you are also pretty much obligated to what you said. So you can't really just decide that, well, now after 3 hours of no activity, you're going to have them pull off the case instead of the 4 that you originally told them. You also can't, because they are not W-2 employees, take disciplinary action against them for not taking a case. However, and there's always a however, isn't there? You can simply not send them assignments if they turn too many assignments down, or you can terminate the contract per the termination clause, which should state that you can terminate it for any reason or no reason at all without explanation. The biggest challenge of subcontracting, though, is not necessarily in the contract itself. It is in finding the right subcontractors, and to do that, you need to know what challenges and obstacles you will encounter along the way. So how do you find subcontractors in the first place? Well, one place many PIs use, with limited success, I might add, are places like Craigslist and other job posting sites. It is more common to see PI firms who are working with bulk surveillance in the workers' comp and personal injury world who use this type of recruitment. Many times they advertise no experience required. We'll train the right person, and then they offer some lowball compensation like $20 an hour. Don't get me wrong, there is nothing wrong with this method if it works for you. In fact, that is exactly how I got into the PI industry. I answered one of those ads on Craigslist. I got hired on as a sub, and it was a great way for me to get my foot in the door and get started in the PI business. But for most of us looking for subs, we usually want some level of experience for the PI to have regarding the type of work that they might be doing. Like for me, when I hire a PI for surveillance, I usually want a good deal of surveillance experience, as most of my cases are related to domestic or fraud situations, not just bulk insurance cases. So I lean heavily on my state PI association. Through them, I can send out on the listserv notifications stating that I need a PI to conduct an investigation, when and where, and I ask that anyone who responds to it do so via email and send me a copy of their resume, along with details as to the experience they have and what equipment they use. I also ask for references of other PI firms they may have done sub work for. Now, most times PIs will not give out references, but in this case, many will, as it isn't divulging the end client's information. I will also interview each one that I'm considering to use over the phone and have them tell me about some other cases that they have worked, how they handled specific situations, and get details about their equipment and their knowledge. These are all key things to do when vetting a PI for subcontract work. I will also do a background on them before offering to hire them as a subcontractor. This has saved me a lot of headaches in the past. I remember one guy who supposedly had a ton of experience as a PI in another state, but when I did a background on him, I noticed he was never licensed as a PI in that state. I also noticed he had security guard experience, and when I brought this up to him, he said that his investigative experience was while he was doing security work, and I was also able to ascertain that he did do some PI work on the side for friends and for family, even though he wasn't licensed. Had I just based things on what he had told me that he could do, I would have hired him and no doubt got less than acceptable work from him. So what can you do if the PI you subcontract doesn't do the work that you expect? Well, generally nothing, unless they breach the contract, but you can just not use them anymore. In fact, most of the time when I hire a sub for the first case or two, I have a contract for each individual case. I don't offer a general contract until I know they are a good fit for me and my company. Finding and keeping good subs is hard too, as many are looking for steady work. So I prefer to have multiple subs, especially for surveillance work, at my disposal. So if one is busy, I have others to go to. Now, if you found value in this video, go down, hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and hit that join button for information on becoming a PI Guide channel member.